she's just stuck like this forever?
If she means this much to you, Nikki, I think we should grab a drink
Wait,
sometime.
I was gonna ask you,
Hi.
good night. What else?
You only get one wish.
So much. Only the branch of a willow
You two
tree.
are dating all of a sudden.
Bear is the kind of guy who overthinks absolutely everything. He has been rehearsing the same love confession word for word. If you made it this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Complete with dramatic pauses and carefully timed silences since high school. And despite all that practice, he still cannot bring himself to say any of it to the actual person it is meant for. When we first meet him, he is running through the speech alone in his apartment, performing it to no one, getting so deep into the moment that he startles himself right out of it. His best friend and roommate Ian watches from the doorway and delivers the only feedback that actually matters. Stop being so dramatic. Be more natural. Just say what you feel. Bear nods along like he always does. He has heard this advice before. He still cannot follow it. Bear works at a local record store alongside the girl he has been quietly and completely in love with for years, a woman named Nikki. She is bright, funny, warm, and entirely unaware that Bear has been mentally composing love letters to her since the very first day they met. The two of them have a natural and effortless dynamic at work, the kind of easy friendship that from the outside already looks like something deeper and more meaningful. But Bear is completely trapped inside his own head, convinced that saying the wrong thing will destroy the only truly good thing he has in his life. The problem is not that Bear does not know how he feels. The problem is that every single time the right moment arrives, something seizes up inside him. The words rearrange themselves into something safe and harmless, and he walks away having said absolutely nothing that matters. Things become more urgent when Nikki mentions casually one day that she will be resigning from the store in a few days. Her father's health is declining, and she needs to go home to take care of him. The clock is now ticking in a way it never was before. Bear makes a firm decision. Tonight, on Nikki's birthday, he is finally going to tell her the truth. No more rehearsing. No more waiting. No more retreating into safe and harmless words at the last second. But first he needs a birthday gift, and that gift is about to change everything in ways he cannot possibly anticipate or prepare for. Wandering through a local antique shop and searching for something, anything at all, that might work as a present, Bear's attention is pulled toward a strange little toy sitting quietly on a shelf. It is called the One Wish Willow. The store attendant, a woman named Viola, notices him pick it up and rushes over immediately. Her expression shifts into something that sits right between genuine concern and a firm and serious warning. She explains carefully that the toy grants exactly one wish to whoever breaks it open. The effect is permanent and lasts an entire lifetime. Once the wish is spoken and the toy is broken, it cannot be undone under any circumstances whatsoever, no matter what happens afterward. She tells him to choose his words with extreme care because there are absolutely no second chances. Not ever. Bear listens politely and nods along and assumes the whole thing is just a clever marketing pitch designed to sell the product. The toy is unusual enough to make for an interesting conversation piece at a birthday party, so he buys it without thinking much more about it and heads out to meet everyone. That night, Bear and Ian head to Nikki's birthday gathering at a local bar. Ian coaches Bear one final time on the way there, keeping it simple and direct. Tonight is the night. But the bar is loud and chaotic, and the timing never seems quite right, and Bear keeps finding small and convenient reasons to wait just a little longer before saying anything. Then Nikki mentions she is too lightheaded from the drinks to drive herself home alone, and Bear immediately sees his opening. He offers to walk her home. During the walk, Nikki opens up in a way she rarely allows herself to. She talks about her father's declining health, the stress of everything piling up on her at once, the feeling of carrying all of it largely by herself with no real support. Bear listens carefully and attentively and tells her she does not have to deal with any of it alone. Nikki says quietly and without looking at him that he is the only person she can actually talk to about things like this. It is practically a confession standing right there in front of him on the sidewalk. But when they reach her front door and the perfect moment is finally right there, close enough to reach out and take, Bear panics completely and utterly. He tells her she is his best friend. Nikki turns and asks him point blank if he likes her. She says clearly that if he does, then now is the time to say it. Bear tells her they are good friends. Nikki goes inside without another word. The door closes. Bear stands alone on the sidewalk staring at nothing in particular. He has blown it again, in the most painful and avoidable way possible. Then he reaches into his pocket, and his hand finds the toy he bought that afternoon. He pulls out the one-wish willow, holds it between both hands standing alone in the dark outside her door, and says his wish out loud without fully thinking through what he is setting in motion. He wishes for Nikki to love him more than anyone else in the entire world. Nikki reappears at the door almost immediately. Her whole energy is completely different from a moment ago. She is warmer and more attentive and almost magnetic in a way that feels both instant and slightly disorienting to experience up close. She invites Bear inside, saying she does not want him walking home alone at this hour. By the end of the night, Nikki is asking to stay at his apartment, pulling close to him, talking to him like someone who has been entirely and suddenly transformed into a different version of herself. The next morning, Bear wakes to find Nikki has made him a full breakfast. It should feel like everything he ever wanted and spent years waiting for. Instead, something feels deeply and immediately wrong, though he cannot quite identify what exactly is setting off the alarm inside him. Before he can work it out, he notices that Nikki has built a small and carefully arranged altar in the corner of his apartment, decorated with photographs and various personal objects devoted entirely to his cat Wawa, who passed away just days ago. It is a gesture that is meant to be touching and loving, but it lands somewhere far closer to deeply unsettling. Bear pulls Ian aside later and fills him in on everything that has been happening since the night of the birthday party. Ian's response is simple and immediate. Is this not exactly what you always wanted? But Bear is starting to feel something he does not yet have a proper name for. Nikki is not just affectionate. She is present in a way that does not feel natural or fully human. Always watching, always close, always right there no matter where he goes or what he does or how much space he tries to create for himself. No matter how many times he tries to convince himself that everything is perfectly fine, something quietly and persistently and insistently keeps telling him that it absolutely is not. The days that follow feel like a dream that is slowly curdling into something rotten and completely unrecognizable. Nikki is always there without exception, present when he wakes up in the morning, waiting when he comes home in the evening, texting constantly during every single moment they happen to be apart from each other. On the surface, it looks like everything Bear spent years quietly imagining and hoping for. But the cracks in the surface appear fast and run very deep. Ian calls him with something he has been hearing around town from people who know Nikki. She apparently has a well-established and widely known history of attaching herself to people in intense and deeply unhealthy ways. And the story she told Bear about her father being seriously ill turns out to be completely and entirely fabricated from start to finish. There was no sick father. There was no declining health crisis waiting for her at home. It was a lie designed deliberately from the very beginning to manufacture sympathy and emotional closeness with Bear. The illness, the vulnerability, the raw and emotional late-night conversation on the walk home from the bar, every single piece of it was carefully constructed. None of it was real. When Bear carefully and gently tries to raise this with her, Nikki does not respond with calm or explanation or any willingness to discuss it. She erupts completely, crying and screaming and spiraling into a tantrum that is frightening in its speed and its intensity. Bear backs off immediately, and the incident leaves him badly shaken for days afterward. Then comes the night. He wakes in the early hours of the morning and reaches over instinctively and finds the other side of the bed empty. He looks around the darkened room and finds Nikki sitting perfectly still in the corner, just watching him sleep in total and absolute silence. She has been sitting there for an unknowable amount of time, completely motionless, simply observing him. By morning, Bear has arrived at a conclusion he can no longer avoid or rationalize or explain away. Whatever is happening inside Nikki right now is not entirely her anymore. And the toy he broke outside her front door on the night of her birthday is the direct and specific reason why. Desperate for any kind of answer or explanation or path forward, Bear calls the customer service number printed on the One Wish Willow's packaging. Somehow, in a detail that manages to be both completely absurd and genuinely terrifying at the same time, someone actually picks up the call. Bear explains everything that has been happening in as much detail as he can manage and asks the only question that truly matters to him in that moment. Can the wish be canceled or reversed in any way? The voice on the other end is calm and measured and almost clinical in the way it delivers its answer. No, every single person gets exactly one wish, and that wish remains active and fully in effect for the rest of both their lives or until one of them dies. There is no reversal process that exists. There is no workaround of any kind available to any person in any circumstance. Bear pushes back hard and argues and explains desperately that Nicky is suffering because of what he did and that this outcome was never what he intended when he made the wish. The voice does not shift or change or soften its answer in any way. And then it does something that genuinely and completely breaks him open. It lets him actually hear Nicky, the real Nicky, trapped somewhere deep and unreachable inside her own body, her sense of self displaced and suffering quietly and continuously because everything she is has been entirely hijacked to serve a wish she never agreed to and never would have chosen under any circumstances. She did not choose this. She has absolutely no control over what her body is doing or saying or feeling at any given moment. She is a prisoner watching helplessly and in horror from somewhere far inside herself, as everything she is gets used for something she would never in her entire life have consented to if anyone had asked her. Bear hangs up the phone. He sits in complete and total silence for a very long time. When he finally comes home, Nicky is standing in the exact same spot he left her standing in that morning before he went out. Motionless. Waiting. Having stood there without moving for the entire time he was gone. This is not love. This was never love. This is a curse he built entirely with his own hands, and then placed on a person who never asked for it and never deserved to carry it. Bear tries desperately and with increasing futility to hold onto some small fragment of normal life. He makes plans to attend a party with Ian and their friends one evening and asks Nicky, as gently and carefully as he can manage, to please just stay home this one single time. She refuses without any hesitation whatsoever and follows him to the party, staying pressed close to his side for the entire night, like a shadow he cannot step away from no matter what he does. At the party, the group settles into playing truth or dare together. When a dare comes up that involves the possibility of Bear kissing his co-worker Sarah, Nicky's reaction is instant and genuinely and deeply terrifying to witness. She physically removes Sarah from where she is sitting, moving her aside without a word of explanation. She positions herself directly between them and then announces to everyone in the room, calmly and clearly, and without raising her voice even a fraction, that nobody is allowed anywhere near Bear. Not anyone. Not under any circumstances at any time. For one brief and absolutely heartbreaking moment, the real Nicky manages to surface through the fog and pressure of the wish. In that sudden and fleeting flash of clarity, she tries to hurt herself, desperately attempting to interrupt and disrupt what the wish is forcing her body to do to the people around her. Bear watches it happen and stands completely frozen in place, knowing with absolute and devastating certainty that he and only he is the reason she is fighting herself from the inside out with no way to win. Back at the apartment later that night, Bear tells her as simply as he can that he needs some space. Just some room to breathe and think. Nicky collapses immediately into desperate and overwhelming begging, saying she will do absolutely anything at all to make him stay. Then she walks to the kitchen without another word, comes back carrying a knife, and tells him with a calm that is somehow the single most terrifying thing in the entire story, that even if her body is completely destroyed, she will always find her way back to him no matter what it takes. All she wants in the entire world is to be with Bear forever. Bear does not sleep at all that night, lying in the dark and listening to the apartment and trying to understand how he got to this point from a birthday party and a wish he made standing alone on a sidewalk. Late that same night, Bear slips quietly outside after receiving a message from his co-worker Sarah asking to meet up with him. Standing out in the dark together, Sarah tells him two things he was genuinely not expecting to hear. The first is that she has been accepted into a prestigious university program in England and will be leaving the country for good next month. The second is that she has had real and genuine feelings for Bear for a long time now and has been carrying them quietly. She has known all along that he chose Nicky. She just needed him to know the truth about how she felt before she left, and the chance was gone forever. Standing there in the dark listening to Sarah speak, Bear realizes something quietly and completely devastating about his own life. There is a version of events where none of this ever happened. A version where he never wandered into that particular antique shop on that particular afternoon, where he just listened honestly to Sarah that night and said something real and true back to her, where nobody ended up hurt or trapped or destroyed by the consequences of one impulsive and thoughtless act. That version of his life exists somewhere out in the world. He just cannot reach it anymore and never will be able to again, no matter what he does. Before either of them can say another word, Nikki appears out of the darkness without warning. When it is over, she turns back to Bear, quiet and completely calm in that particular way that has come to terrify him more than anything else, and tells him she will take care of everything and that he should go home. Bear stands alone in the dark, knowing that Sarah had a scholarship and a bright future and an entire life ready to begin across the ocean and in another country. And he is the sole and direct reason that absolutely none of it will ever happen now. Shattered by guilt and completely out of workable ideas, Bear goes back to the antique shop the very next day and buys every last remaining one-wish willow they have in their inventory. He cannot use any of them himself because his own wish has already been permanently and irrevocably spent. But Ian can use them. He tracks Ian down and tells him the full story of everything that has happened, still visibly shaking and carrying the evidence of what the night before cost everyone involved. Ian is completely convinced Bear has lost his mind, right up until Bear insists he make a test wish just to demonstrate that the toys are real and that every word of the story is true. Ian rolls his eyes and sarcastically wishes out loud for $1 billion just to play along. It appears instantly and in full right there in front of both of them, stacked and real and undeniable. Ian stares at it for a long moment. He now believes absolutely every word Bear has told him. Bear grabs his arm and begs him urgently to use another toy immediately and wish everything back to the way it was before any of this began. But before they can put any kind of plan together, Bear comes home to find Nikki dressed as Sarah. Her clothes are Sarah's clothes. Her hair is styled the way Sarah styles hers. The way she is moving through the apartment is Sarah's way of moving. She has been watching Sarah carefully and studying her, and is now performing her as completely as she can because the only thing she wants is to be loved the way she saw Bear look at Sarah when he thought no one was watching. In the chaos and horror that follows, Ian arrives at the front door and tries to help. But when the dust settles, Ian is gone. Sarah is gone. The woman Bear fell quietly and genuinely in love with over the course of years has been replaced entirely, and it seems permanently, by something that is being driven entirely by a single desperate wish made in one moment of weakness and loneliness on a dark sidewalk. And there is no path left anywhere that leads back to undoing any of it. With nothing left that he can see and nowhere left to turn, Bear makes what feels to him like his only remaining decision. The voice on the customer service line told him with complete clarity and without any ambiguity that the wish ends when one of them is no longer alive. He goes to his medicine cabinet and takes out the same sleeping pills that took the life of his cat Wawa at the very beginning of this story, a grim and full-circle symmetry that lands with the weight of everything this story has cost. He goes to find Nikki and sits down carefully beside her. He holds her close, and he waits for whatever comes next. But in those final quiet moments, something happens that neither of them planned for, and that neither could have predicted from any angle. The real Nikki, who has been watching everything that has happened from somewhere deep and completely unreachable inside herself, suffering in total silence and utter helplessness through every terrible and devastating thing her body has been made to do to the people around her, had somehow in all of this managed to find a one-wish willow of her own. And she made her own wish with it when she had the chance. She wished for Bear to love her until the very end. The wish locks in at exactly the worst and most wrong possible moment. Bear slips away, held in Nikki's arms, bound completely to her wish in his very last moments, loving her the only way that this broken and irreparable story had anything left to offer either one of them at the end. When Bear is gone, the force that has been driving and controlling Nikki finally and completely releases its hold on her. Nikki comes back to herself fully and entirely and all at once for the very first time since the night she opened her front door and found him standing there alone in the dark, wishing for something he thought would make everything better. She looks down at Bear and the full weight of understanding descends on her all at once, every piece of it arriving in a single and completely crushing wave of clarity. What happened to her? What she did during all of it? What he did at the beginning of it? What it ended up costing them both before either of them truly understood what was actually happening. Every single piece of it lands at exactly the same moment. The screen fades to black. There is no resolution waiting on the other side of it. There is no redemption and no second chance and no quiet moment of healing. There is only the full and complete and terrible weight of a wish that should never have been made by anyone, spoken out loud in one desperate and unthinking moment of loneliness on a dark sidewalk, and the two ordinary people it destroyed entirely before either of them ever had the chance to understand what they had actually done to each other and to themselves.